Hey guys, Sean here. If you believe things are bad where we are, the situation in Sri Lanka has just exploded. Now we're talking about people rioting, the locals protesting on the streets, and the president running away. I kid you not, angry protesters literally storm into the presidential palace and they are swimming in the pools, they're chilling on the luxury beds. And this is what happens when inflation hits 54%. But food inflation specifically is over 80%, and that is insane, and we all need to be worried. And that means a loaf of bread might be $5 today and it's now $10 12 months down the road. No one can really survive that, and I think this lesson we are seeing in Sri Lanka might be coming to a country near you. And this is the big risk that is waking up every government across the world today. If people don't have enough food to eat, they will revolt, and if things get bad enough, it'll be the Arab Spring all over again, but this time it's just a Sri Lankan version, and things are really going to get worse for the country. Now, a lot of us view this collapse as some crisis in a far-flung country in Asia. It can never happen to me, right? This economic freefall just can't happen where I am. But what if it does? Are you prepared or will you starve? It's a real binary question, and you can quickly see why this inflation hell in Sri Lanka could be a teaser of what's to come across the world. Countries like Egypt, Lebanon, Turkey are all on the doorstep of runaway inflation. And if you notice, this country, they all share one thing in common. They import a lot of energy and food from the rest of the world. Egypt alone imports over 80% of their wheat from Russia, and Lebanon's food inflation has reached 1000% according to the United Nations. Now just take a look at this picture, guys. It's really heartbreaking seeing children trying to survive and fighting for food. And I'm going to go full Dr. Doom today because there are a lot of bad policies going on in the world. They're just setting us up for more chaos, more inflation, and just more food crisis down the road. But first, we need to understand the Sri Lankan crisis, and you'll quickly find shocking similarities with what is going on back in the United States and the rest of the world as well. Now, the big problem with Sri Lanka's inflation hell is that they import more than they export, and they are spending more than what they earn. And this has left the country with a big liquidity problem. They have just run out of dollars. And this is big because Sri Lanka imports food, fuel, and machinery from overseas, and all this require the world's reserve currency, US dollars. And we can see as their US foreign reserves drop, their inflation starts to skyrocket to over 50%. And if you trace back to the root causes, it was the Sri Lankan government that was spending more than what they brought in, ballooning the country's debt to GDP to 111%. And they were investing crazily in infrastructure instead of building up their real economy, and they made crazy decisions that included banning imports of fertilizers to save US dollars. And we all know what happened, right? This crazy move just destroyed crop yields, destroyed their food production, and now the country has to import more food that requires even more dollars. So it's very counterproductive. And this deadly cycle of crazy decision making reached a fever pitch when Sri Lanka defaulted on their foreign debt totaling $51 billion. And because of this, they got cut out of the international markets. No one in the right mind would want to lend them money anymore, and the government is literally begging their citizens overseas to send back US dollars to help buy food and fuel. And this is the big problem with the world economy today. It's all interconnected with the dollar. A lot of countries are not just holding US debt, but their own debt is denominated in dollars. And that is why as the United States continues to hike interest rates, we are going to see many countries face a lot of inflationary pressures. And if the Fed raises interest rates by say 5%, and a foreign country that imports a lot doesn't hike their own rates, their currency will depreciate versus the dollar, and this means you need more local currency to swap for dollars to buy food and fuel from the international markets. And it's because of this situation that Sri Lanka's central bank is still printing money like crazy today to pay their local salaries, and this is just devaluing the currency even more, right? They're making inflation even worse, and they're really caught in this deadly loop of doom where no one wants to lend them dollars, so they need to print up even more rupees to buy dollars, but this just makes the next batch cost even more. And this is the problem that we need to address. Over the next 6 to 18 months, the US dollar is going to wreak havoc across the globe and cause massive currency devaluations. We are suddenly going to see a ton of currency crisis pop up across the globe because there's going to be a big shortage of dollars. There are going to be a ton of countries that will experience crazy high inflation, and it just won't be the usual suspects like Argentina, Venezuela or Egypt, right? We're talking more about countries in Asia and Africa that are going to see tremendous devaluations in their currency because they just have too much debt. And the world is in one gigantic debt bubble, and the majority of which is denominated in dollars. Right now, global debt is an astounding $230 trillion, and this is growing fast, plus it's not going to stop. And as interest rates start to rise, this will just make the payments more and more impossible. So countries will be faced with just two situations. Either they hike rates to protect their currency but destroy their economy, or they can just print money to buy more dollars that will just cause more hyperinflation like what we are almost seeing in Sri Lanka. And this is the devil's deal if you're outside of the United States and your country is importing a lot of food and fuel from overseas, then you really need to prepare because food prices are going to continue to go up. Just take a look at Sri Lanka's fuel prices. It was around 150 rupees a litre before it almost quadrupled in price to 550 within a span of just like 6 to 7 months. And that's near hyperinflation territory, and things will only get worse. Things are really getting more extreme in Europe. Russia just cut off their gas supply to Europe, and this is going to cause another round of disruptions and higher energy prices, and that means fertilizers will get more expensive and farmers are going to experience lower yields. So you really need to be preparing right now. If your fridge is empty or you have a cabinet space, start stocking up on your essentials and non-perishables because things will get much worse before they eventually become better, right? And I think we are really seeing the world reach a breaking point where inflation is really the biggest threat around. It is the most immediate threat that can really lead people to protest and cause mayhem on the streets. And I think countries that can fight inflation are really going to do so in spades. We are going to see the United States and Europe start to hike rates even more to bring down inflation, because either way there's going to be pain, right? You can either choose the pain of inflation that could lead to protests and riots across your country, or you can crush inflation but also destroy asset prices at the same time. And I think the answer is rather obvious which they'll choose. Central banks that have the leeway will start to raise rates to front-run inflation before it gets worse. And that means we can continue to expect asset prices across the board continue to come down, stocks will come down, precious metals will come down, and eventually real estate will crash as well because money will start to flow into the essentials of life, the food and fuel. So if you're privileged to be an investor and outside of survival mode, you really want to hold on to more cash during this period because there are going to be a lot of bargain hunting and assets becoming dirt cheap down the road. Blood hasn't hit the streets yet, and a majority of mainstream media still deny that we are in a recession, even though all signs are pointing to one. You really need to believe your eyes and think for yourself. Don't even take what I say at face value, do your own research. Just look around you guys, dig into the numbers and see really what's happening locally around you. But I think the global issue here is how the US dollar is essentially enslaving the world. Sure, Sri Lanka has a lot of issues, but this liquidity crisis is going to get worse and a lot of countries are going to be in trouble. We are going to see more debt defaults and devaluations down the road, and this is a situation where the US dollar will appreciate so much that the rest of the world will have a shortage of dollars, triggering a deadly cycle where the dollar keeps going up while other currencies continue to crash. And we are seeing that happen right now. The dollar index is at a 20-year high, and this can't continue forever or foreign currencies will just essentially become worthless. And this is why I think we're at the doorsteps of a great reset where countries are going to come together to figure out a new way to break free from the dollar, or at least reduce reliance on the reserve currency. This can come in the form of more bilateral trade deals, holding other foreign currencies, or stockpiling more gold, which I think is the smarter option actually. However, it's too late for Sri Lanka now, and they have to be built up by the IMF with $3 billion at least. And this means the new Sri Lankan government, if they want the loan, they will need to hike interest rates and raise taxes as part of the conditions, right? You don't get money for free, guys. There are always terms and conditions behind it. And while this will help bring down inflation, the country's economy will be crushed for years or even decades, and this will cause investment and people to flee the country. Now, people in Sri Lanka are already practicing food rationing. 9 out of 10 families are skipping meals because their money is just getting hyperinflated away. And this is the big risk with just holding fiat currency no matter which country you're in. Because you are not the United States, you just can't print up tons of US dollars to buy stuff. But if you store some wealth, at least in gold, you'll be able to survive better. And that's the importance of hard money. if you're living in Sri Lanka, holding US dollars is also problematic because you need to convert them into rupees to buy food and gas, and you can't go to a bank for the best rate. According to reports on the street, back in April, banks were paying like 315 rupees for your dollar, but you could sell it on the black market for 380, right? So things can really get shady real fast, and that's why having all your money in currencies isn't a good solution even if it's stable like the US dollar. You need some hard money like gold with you, because it has the broadest base of buyers and sellers around the world. Sri Lankas are really getting this lesson in real time, and those who have gold are really selling it off to put food on the table and to survive. Now, even their central bank has been selling their gold since 2016 to try and stabilize the rupee, and it's never a good sign if your central bank starts to sell gold off because of a failing currency. Just take a look at the price of gold in Sri Lankan rupees. It went from 360 grand to over 630 grand an ounce within 6 months. But if we zoom out, we can see that the price of gold went up by 4 times in value over the last 7 years. And that just shows how much more important gold is, especially if you're in a more developing country like Sri Lanka or Argentina, where you also have mismanagement of your economy. So a currency devaluation isn't just an American issue, it's a global issue, and I would argue it's even worse for foreign countries, because at least the United States can just print out a bunch of money, buy stuff, export their inflation to the rest of the world, but you can't. And that's why you need hard money within reach. Right now, we are seeing asset prices across the board just go down, and if you don't have a position in gold, this could be a good time to get in, because over the next 6 to 18 months, there could be discounts, very great discounts down the road. Now, obviously, there's no need to panic and start rushing for the exits, but just study the Sri Lankan crisis carefully and understand that it could happen to you and me. And if you're living in the United States, there is going to be a shift away from the dollar. It's already losing its reserve currency status, and this situation in Sri Lanka is going to shine a spotlight on it even brighter. Now, since 1999, the dollar share of foreign reserves has dropped from 70% down to 59%, and we have the BRICS countries actively discussing a new reserve currency. It's already in the works. Now, sure, in the short term, I expect the dollar to strengthen even further. Countries will have a knee-jerk reaction to stockpile even more dollars, because even though inflation is so high, the dollar is the cleanest shirt in the laundry basket. The dollar ship is sinking the slowest compared to the rest. But in the long term, I think more countries will realize the dangers of being extremely reliant on the dollar, and they will seek ways to really try and break free. Maybe it'll be stockpiling gold, maybe it'll be more bilateral trade, or countries with land, they'll try to be more self-sufficient and import less. And whatever the case, we must be ready for a big shift in the global order, because I think this big experiment in globalization is really starting to break down, and when countries have enough, they will start to blame the world reserve currency, and this could trigger a flight out of US dollars, which will harm America the most. So let me know what you think. Are you prepared if your country goes the route of Sri Lanka? Are you prepared if hyperinflation hits? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe, and if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe as we navigate through these crazy times. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you soon.